Welcome on inside the Business of Social podcast powered by STN Digital. I am your host, David Brickley. Each and every episode, we talk to the experts to keep you up to speed on the ever-changing digital and social and marketing and linear and OTT and landscape. Episode 41, guys. We have Wes Unseld. We have MLB 12-time All-Star Eddie Matthews. We have All-ACC, two-time Super Bowl champion, Charlie Waters, of course. We have the 12-time All-Star Tom Seaver. However, this episode is going to be NBA Finals MVP from 2011, Dirk Nowitzki. That's an easy 41, I feel like. Very easy. Always going more basketball on this pod, but what are you going to do? All right, so we have the Vice President of Content at a company called StockX. No, it has nothing to do with stocks and all that. It has to do with sneakers, streetwear, handbags. This is actually a really cool company. I'm excited to let you guys know about it. They essentially, sell. They have different verticals, but for instance, for sneakers, they put sellers with buyers, and they're the middleman, so they're able to verify if the sneaker is legit. So you'll see a pair of Jordans, you'll see a pair of rare Yeezys that go up there, and just all different types of shoes and handbags and streetwear. But what's cool is actually the seller they'll send it to StockX. They have a team of verifiers that will verify that it's legit and not a knockoff and in good condition and everything like that. And then StockX will then ship it to the buyer at that point. So that way the money is not released until StockX has verified it. So a really cool platform, and she's built an incredible team. She spent some time at Turner, at TBS, Fandango, and NBC. So came from the linear side of things. We've talked to a lot of people on the podcast that have been on the TV side, and now she's helping with a really fast-growing company. I think from 2017 to 2019, they've grown from 85 to 800 employees. This is almost a Business of Social Entrepreneur Rap duplicate episode here. So anyways, you guys are going to enjoy this one. Dana Robinson, the Vice President of Content at StockX. All right, y'all. She is the Vice President of Content at StockX. Dana Robinson joins me on the podcast. Dana, thanks so much for the time.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. Thanks for thinking of StockX.
Of course. I always kick things off with a random question. So here's one for you. What's the best pair of sneakers made all time?
Of all time. When I came to StockX, I had one pair of credible sneakers that everybody said, okay, you can wear those, but anything else you own, you should not even bother wearing to the office.
Wow. Is that well received?
And so I'm not sure that I would call it the best of all time, but it was certainly my saving grace. And it was the Comme des Garçons Chuck Taylor collab, the little low profile with the heart on the side.
So I know you spent some time at Fandango and then at Turner as well. From that time now at StockX, do you just feel like you have this wealth of knowledge of all the best sneakers out there? I'm sure you do.
I do. I mean, I can really impress teenage kids for sure. And I actually own 12 pairs of sneakers now that are not embarrassing. So not bad for a 43-year-old mom.
That's awesome. So to that point, StockX, you guys call it the stock market for sneakers. Can you give a quick 60-second elevator pitch on what StockX is and then ultimately what you do day to day at StockX?
Yeah, we actually call it the stock market of things.
Got it.
The X is for the things. So we started in sneakers, but since have launched handbags, watches, streetwear. We have various collectibles on the site like cause statues and things like that. So, I mean, we're expanding and we're always looking at new verticals. And so we didn't ever want to get pigeonholed into just sneakers.
Yeah.
That's definitely where our bread and butter is.
Where was the business model kind of birthed out of? Because obviously you have the eBays of the world, you have Amazon, you have these different websites. Where was the need for StockX and why did it come to be?
Yeah, so Josh Luber, who's one of our co-founders, he had a site called Campless, which was basically the Kelley Blue Book of sneakers.
Okay.
And giving you that fair market value. And then Dan Gilbert, who's the chairman here at Quicken Loans, he's one of our co-founders as well. His kids were buying sneakers and having a little bit of an inconsistent experience on places like eBay or on even on like Twitter and Instagram. People sell things. You never know if it's authentic. You never know who's selling it to you. You never know if you're going to get the product that you're paying for, and you don't know if it's a fair price. So this was kind of the marriage of those two things, like needing there to be a better way, and this person out here who had been scraping all of this data to find that fair market value. So together they've created StockX.
That's awesome. And I was talking to my producer, Will, before the show, and it's pretty cool. So you have like a verification process, right? So the seller has to send like the shoes or the handbag to you guys first. You inspect it, and then you kind of release it the same way Venmo does or what have you, where there's kind of the middleman in between.
Right. And so we can keep every transaction anonymous, so you're never having to deal with a flaky seller or buyer or any of that communication that happens in the middle. But also, you know that what you get has been authenticated by a team of expert authenticators.
Have you guys, has there been a situation where you've got it wrong? Like there's just been like the most amazing knockoff ever, and like your team was just like, it was just one of a kind, and it was tough to verify, if that makes sense?
I mean, you know, we're humans, and so we're not doing any AI. There's no machine.
I'm saying it's a tough job. Yeah, you have to. There's a lot of intricacies.
It's a very, very, very. It's a fraction of a percentage.
Bet.
So
Gotcha.
For the most part, we are very blanking on the word. Our success rate is much higher.
99.999%.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Twitter, you would think that it was 100%.
Yeah,
exactly. But it's something like 99.
Awesome. So Vice President of Content, how do you approach content at StockX and coming into it? What have you kind of developed internally to make sure you guys are on the up and up?
Yeah, so when I started about 2 years ago. We had a very small content team. We had a director of sneaker content. We had a director of handbag content. We had a director of watch content, and then we had a data journalist.
Okay.
And since then,
you're the VP that sits over those three?
Correct.
When you started.
Since then, we've grown the content team to over 25 people.
Wow.
We've built out an internal video team. We've built out a full social media team. We have a brand ambassador team that kind of does events and gives experiences for people who come through the headquarters.
That's awesome.
And we have our editorial team in addition to all of the data journalism that happens. So we've really built it out to take what we were doing initially, which was this very transactional kind of literal content, which is Here is an item, here's how you get it. And we've turned it into a much more brand and exposure kind of strategy where we're saying, here's what StockX is, here's what differentiates us, here's how to use it. And then the final bucket where we kind of live right now is much more a cultural play. So getting into more of the narrative around the culture of streetwear and sneakers and handbags and watches and trying to kind of shine a light on people who are in the space who are doing kick-ass things that maybe nobody knows about.
That's awesome. That's a really awesome team that you've built out. I guess, Mike, but this is a super granular question, but as a marketer and as a social person, it automatically goes to this direction. How does it work in terms of brands and the ability to use other brands for the purposes of StockX, whether it be Jordan, Louis Vuitton? Are there certain lanes that you have to be careful of not like showing a brand too much, or do you have to approve that by anywhere? Like where do you get constrained in those type of situations?
I mean, we kind of think of it as sort of like on the news side of things, right? So if we're reporting facts, and do rely very heavily on the data. And so a lot of the work that we do around the brands is about data. So what's popular, what's trending, did a real world event impact sales, that sort of storytelling.
Got it.
But outside of that, we work more along, we try to stay within what's happening trend-wise. So less about the brand itself and what Nike is thinking in terms of what are we doing with the Jordan brand, and more about like what are athletes wearing this off the court, or what are musicians wearing on stage or off stage. And so not really leaning too far into one brand over the other.
But like any almost store or anybody that offers product, like you can say, hey, come to this location and you can see all this amazing product we have type deal.
Right.
How it seems like you've really built this community through culture, like you said, through trends. I think that's honestly where a lot of marketers get it wrong, right? They're just always trying to sell, and I talk about it a lot on the podcast. They're always trying to just, the quick sell and really going at their followers. But how have you found a way to properly develop a community and kind of develop that upper funnel marketing approach?
Yeah, I mean, we had to start with the traditional, as I mentioned. We had to start with, here's the product, and I think in doing that,
that's the education piece, right? Like that you just have to get out there, right?
Exactly. And so you need to get to a critical mass of sales. And you need to get some credibility with your buyers and your sellers so that when you are trying to do that, something that feels more cultural and
That's
narrative
important. Yeah.
driven, that you have credibility on the commerce side. You couldn't go out there and have terrible credibility on the commerce side and then be
Yeah.
like, listen to me tell a story about culture, right? And so it's we had to set the foundation in order to get where we are now from the
That's
narrative
actually a
side.
really smart point. I've never heard anybody bring up before. It's like, yes, everybody wants to build a community and be provide value and things like that. But if you ultimately don't get the main thing right and build that foundation, then
Right.
the community and all that stuff is just kind of BS if it's not tied back to the product you can guarantee.
Right. I mean, especially on social, where you have no choice but to be transparent because everyone can
Yep.
look at all of the complaints that are coming in about customer service, and
Hmm.
they look to see, like, did this complaint get resolved? And that is part of the story, whether you like it or not, because this is what social is largely used for these days, right? Like, we can tweet all day long about all of the great stuff that we're doing, but if somebody sees a tweet that's a complaint, all they want to know is how did
Yep.
this get resolved? So.
From your guys' standpoint, what different, I always ask on the show, but like what different platforms seem to be working the best right now, whether it be an Instagram, a YouTube, a Twitter? When you look at the VP of content, there's a bunch of different ways that you can touch your audience. And maybe it's obviously just the home-based website, but where are you really spending your time on here in 2019?
Yeah, Instagram is really the core platform for us, and it's not just feed or stories. We're really seeing a lot of success in
Hmm.
IGTV, where I think some brands are still struggling to figure that out. But we have a weekly show called Market Watch that started as a YouTube show, but then we reformatted it and kind of made it a little more IGTV friendly, and that is now where our core audience is
Hmm.
it's IGTV. So, but Instagram is great because you can make things shoppable. There's the video, there's the story, there's the feed, there's the grid. There's a lot of opportunities there, and so you can kind of get a little bit of everything from the holistic marketing strategy all in one platform. But we do have a presence on all of the major platforms, and
Right.
we try to make sure that we're customizing what we're doing per platform and not just do the one to many
If
publishing.
you have like, I guess from a content perspective though, does it always rely back on inventory and what people are willing to sell? Because if there's some really, I guess, rare Yeezys that come through as StockX, you probably want to, from a content perspective, push that out and let people know, hey, we have an opportunity here. But that's kind of ever flowing, right? Almost like sports where you just don't know what you may get.
Yeah, I mean that is a challenge, and we have operations centers not just in Detroit anymore. So we've got London and we've got Jersey and we've got Tempe. So it's a little more challenging to have access to product. But when we don't have access to the product itself, we can still talk about it and we can
Yeah.
still pull our data. Like I said, we always go back to the data. We're reliant on that as
Hmm.
as a company. So if we don't have the image, luckily through the magic of motion graphics and imagery, we can show it on screen versus have it
Well, I
in
mean,
hand.
I meant even in terms of inventory. Like, if there's some rare, like, crazy colorway of a Yeezy that there was only 100 produced, and you guys get your hands on it, not so much physically, but would that then turn into, can we make a quick week long or 48-hour content campaign because all of a sudden we have this inventory?
Sure. So that actually came up with Supreme just released a drum kit, a drum set,
Right.
and so there was no sales on StockX, and we happen to have access to one, and so StockX just purchased it, and so we
That's
now are the
smart.
proud owner of a Supreme drum
Yeah.
kit, which you can see if you go to our drop-off location in New York City right now.
Awesome.
We have it set up, and we did make some content around
How
it.
much does a Supreme drum kit go for these days?
You'll have to check it out on
Oh,
StockX.
wow. The little plug there. I like that. All right.
I think it's around 15K.
Woo. Okay.
Yeah, Supreme is doing something right.
Yeah, they're doing something right. To slap Supreme logo on anything, all of a sudden it's thousands of dollars. I love it. So when did you say 2 years ago, at what point was the company, I know you've grown crazy since then, but how old was the company when you first got brought on board?
Yeah, so we launched in 2015. It was founded in 2015. I
Okay.
guess was the founding date. 2016 was the proper launch. I came in 2017.
So
Um,
early, yep.
I was employee number 85.
Okay.
So we all wear our employee numbers very proudly,
Awesome.
especially if it's under 3 digits. So yeah, and then as soon as I got here, about a month later, we launched streetwear. as our fourth vertical. This was a big year.
So how many employees do you know the total now?
Yeah, we're over 800.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
In 2 years ago from 85 to 800. That's insane.
That's some hyper growth.
That is hyper growth. Wow. Okay. So when you get first brought on board as the VP of content, what was kind of the first thing you looked at, and how did you kind of build that foundation to be able to grow a team? Because that's a big deal too, even for your team, 2 years to go from like 5 or 6 to 25. What was some of the core things that you knew you had to get right, and kind of your philosophy as you kind of built your team out?
Yeah, I did an audit just of what volume of content we were putting out, and what the quality of that content was and how it was performing. It was, with a startup, everyone's just doing everything.
Yeah.
So our one content director is doing all of the sneaker emails. He's doing all the sneaker social.
The lawyers jumping into Photoshop and helping out. Yeah. Type deal.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And maybe a photo shoot.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was just identifying pain points, seeing like, can we scale with one person? Can we scale social if you're still doing it? And it's like, the answer is no. So we need to bring in social. And then also I just began to look at subject matter expertise. Each of the 4 verticals are very different. There's very different knowledge base.
Yeah.
And so, you can't
And the audience knows if you're BSing. Like, you got to know your game.
Absolutely.
Especially sneakers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I am not, like I said, I'm not a sneakerhead. I'm not into streetwear. So, but I knew I needed to have people who were and who were experts, and I could help inform the strategy. They have the subject matter expertise. And so I just started building it out from there. The bulk of our efforts go to sneakers and streetwear. Those are our 2 biggest verticals. But we have active social communities around handbags and watches as well. And we're starting to build out the additional content, their editorial and video content for the luxury verticals as we kind of staff up and get the
Awesome.
Get the right resources.
I've heard you say it a bunch of times already, which I know this is why we're going to get along together. Data. I love it.
Yeah.
What are the different tools that you use to track this data in order to give you those conclusions to go forward with?
Yeah, I mean, for social, we've tried a variety of things, and in my career, I've tried a variety of things.
I bet.
I just keep it native, to be honest. We go to the native platform, and I feel like that's the most trustworthy, and it's never down when you need to access
API connector's not down, yeah.
Yeah, and then we work with that, and then Google Analytics. We're keeping it pretty simple here, but you get everything that you need, both from the native platforms. It's a little extra. It's a little more manual work, I think, to create those reports, but we feel like the data is most pure that way.
In your last couple of years at StockX, has there been a campaign or maybe just something that you guys released on social or the website that really blew you away about the results or just how it performed for the audience?
Yeah, actually, we worked. I don't know if you've heard of the influencer named Yeezy Busta.
I've not.
Yeah, so
follow him now.
I'm pretty sure that's his birth name.
Okay. First name Yeezy, last name Busta. All right.
Yeah, exactly. His whole shtick is seeing somebody wearing a pair of Yeezys and then deciding if they're real or fake. So he's busted people who claim that they're wearing real Yeezys for wearing fake ones. So he was on our influencer program, and we typically want to slot influencers when they come through the Detroit headquarters. We want to slot them into one of our existing series. So do we put them into Market Watch, or do we put them into Off the Top, which is another series that we do, or Personal Space? None of them seem to make sense for Yeezy Busta. So we decided, let's do some bespoke content with him, and let's have a game show called Real or Fake.
That's
funny.
And
we had our authenticator, one of our longest term authenticators, come in and present him with not just Yeezys, but a lot of shoes, and then have him bust real versus fake. It was, in my opinion, it was kind of just straightforward content. And when we were shooting it, we were like, I mean, this is going to be fine, but I don't think it's going to move the world. It's in our top 5 most performing videos.
Wow.
Completely organic, hundreds of thousands of views. We were just blown away by the success of that. And I think that just goes to show the power of influencers still. I know that they get a bad rap.
I agree.
But I think if you work with an influencer the right way, and
that's the key, because if you would have threw him on Market Watch or whatever, it doesn't do well. But you guys found a way to how are we going to be genuine to not only our audience but his audience as well?
Exactly. And it didn't feel like he was just slapping a hashtag on an
Yep.
Instagram, just a one and done. And we also then put him in our TV commercial, just to kind of show like we have a relationship with this guy. He supports us, we support him. And he really became more of a brand ambassador at that point than just a
That's awesome.
traditional influencer.
I
So,
think I
yeah.
think it's like anything else, right? If you're going to be lazy with marketing, with your email newsletter, with your influencer strategy, if you're not going to think about it and do it the right way, it's not going to perform well. And I think that's what people get wrong about influencers. It seems like from your leadership and also probably at the very top, you guys do what a lot of people don't, which is focus on brand awareness first. It sounds like just by being able to create these original series and being able to do this content. Is that just a philosophy internally that you guys are creating content to build the brand and build the community rather than, again, being like straight up with the CTA?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it took us a while to get there. We had to lay that foundation. And
Mm-hmm.
so the early content, the early days of our content, it was really here's a shoe and here's where you can get
Yeah,
it. Here's the click through or whatever it is.
right.
And I think we did a lot of work on the brand to understand what our brand represents and what our brand is and how we're differentiated from our competitors in the space. And I think once we got to that point where we all felt like we had a solid handle on what the brand was and what we represent and how we wanted to get that out into the marketplace, then we had the confidence and permission to kind of go out there and
Once
start
you
talking
were
about
fully aware of the brand, you were able to do brand awareness for everybody else. Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
exactly.
That
Right.
makes sense.
I mean, I think that something that happens, this is my first startup, but even at big companies, something that happens is everyone thinks that they know what
Yes.
the brand is. And
Yep.
if you ask 10 people, you'd get 10
Mm-hmm.
different answers. And unless you have a really solid like, brand Bible, style guide, you're having a lot of conversations and communication with all of the different teams that represent it. Unless you do that, you're going to end up with this kind of all of this chaos, this brand chaos in terms of your output. And so our work is still working. I mean, it's an ongoing battle for sure. You have to continue to
Yeah.
hone and polish, but I think we're getting to a place where everything feels very cohesive and like a very strong brand story.
So this may be interesting with your background. I know at NBC and Turner as well. What are your thoughts on television advertisement? It's been a topic on this show quite a bit as the eyeballs go more to digital and mobile first. But how have you approached that with StockX specifically? And has that been successful for you guys if you have?
Yeah, we had a lot of conversation because we have 3 TV commercials that are out in the wild, and our target, our core consumer is a younger male
Yeah.
audience, and a lot of them have pulled the plug.
Mm-hmm.
They're cord cutters, and
Yep.
so we debated a lot as to whether or not we should go fully digital. Should we go full TV? I think there's a little bit of optics involved with the TV spot that like you've made it,
Yeah, it's
right?
true.
So there was a little bit of that, but we did the thing that I think that the smart thing to do, which is we tested on digital and then tested versions and tried to see what was performing and with which audiences, and then we had a smarter strategy for once we hit TV.
Got it.
And
And
then our 3 different spots kind of told 3 different stories and 3 different value props for the brand, and we tested those and it continued to run one that was performing the best.
and that did you see a brand lift, or how did you measure that success of the actual linear spot and what that did for you guys?
Yeah, so like I said, we had 3 different approaches.
Right.
So one was much more of a go get the shoe, sort of that transactional
Yep.
thing. One was here's how you use the app. It's called Inside the App, and it kind of walked you through some of the basic functionality of the app. And one was more of a why should you use StockX?
Got it.
And so each one produced different results, right? Like the thing that here's the shoe, that's the one that we saw the most immediate conversion. The one that says here's the app, that's the one where we saw bigger conversion, but we didn't see people going right away. It was like, oh, I know how to use the app when I want a shoe. Now I know how to use
Right,
it.
right.
And then we didn't see it was hard to measure the other one, which was here's what StockX is and here's why you should want to use it because shoes sell out. And so when something sells out, StockX is
Yeah.
there. Very difficult to measure that one. That one's
For
like
sure.
top of funnel, maybe even beyond the funnel. So
Beyond
each
the
one
funnel, I like
measured-
that.
right. So each one was measured in a different way, and each one had different success metrics attached to it.
That's
So,
awesome. What did you, I guess for a younger demo, did you go after like NBA or NFL games, or was it more in sports?
we are looking at doing things with the NFL. The NFL isn't an obvious place for us because we don't sell football shoes.
Right.
So, but a lot of the players are big sneakerheads, and so that's the
And the
opportunity.
audience too. I feel like the culture and the demo kind of speaks to that.
Yeah,
Streetwear.
exactly. So we wanted to make sure that before we go into the NFL territory, that we're doing it in a way that's smart and feels authentic, as opposed to, oh, here's a guy with 3 million followers, and you should
Yeah.
put a pair of shoes on him, right? So, like we were talking about before, you got to do bespoke things with the right person and making sure that it matches their audience and our audience.
Right. This is I'm just randomly thought about this, but also boxing is interesting because that's a very young, male-heavy demo too. Maybe interesting for you guys to check out. What is what is a common mistake that you see other brands making with their content?
Other mistakes. I mean, I don't know if we have enough time to really
Oh,
get into all of it.
lay it
No,
on me.
no, I'm kidding. I think it's the brand problem, right? I think it's you can tell when companies or organizations get too large, and maybe they have one agency doing social and one
Yeah.
agency doing TV and one agency doing editorial, and it just doesn't feel like they're telling the same story. It's one thing if you're trying to tell different stories to different target audience or target segments, but when your owned content starts to feel so disparate and like two different
Yeah.
companies are telling the same story, I think that's when you see it. And so we're still doing a lot of our work in house. We've created teams to do things in house because culture is so important. We want to make
Yep.
sure that everyone's making the content knows the culture.
Hmm.
But as you expand, you have to be able to scale, and so you do need to bring on agencies, and you
Yep.
need to make sure that you can scale with your company on the content offerings. So that's on us. That's creating those brand Bibles, and it's making sure
That's
that we
it's funny you say that because
have
somebody that owns an agency, it is I would say it's rare to kind of get that brand Bible or that here's our story, here's our core demo. Let's make sure we deliver this to you before you start your pitch or start your campaign ideation. And to your point, the partners that have done that, it's so much easier to go down that certain road of ideation or campaign build out because you have that. And to your point, I've heard a lot of people on the show have said just that is like, it seems so simple, but what's our story and who's our audience are two things that you think every marketer would ask at the very top, but I feel like most brands don't do that right.
Yeah, and I think you can tell. I think
Yep.
that's kind of where things start to break down a little bit.
A common word in our industry, they call it the soft touch and ways to get in front of your audience in a organic way that feels genuine and not, again, too much in your face. Are there any fun ways that you've been able to, through content, just remind people that you're around or just be able to touch them a little bit, whether it's through email or different campaigns in a I guess, more soft approach?
Yeah, I mean, we do an email distribution, but you have to opt in, right? We have an editorial email, but we also have the drip campaigns and the
Yep.
transactional emails, and making it like, are you still there? Like, are you still interested?
Right.
I still like you, that kind of stuff. So on email, I think we have that pretty much covered. I think we're trying to get more experiential in our approach, so providing opportunities for people to engage with the brand IRL, which I think is something that you can't do right away. Right? You have to kind of establish yourself first. And so this year has really been the year of experiential. We do a thing.
Nice.
We do a thing every year called StockX Day. That's here in Detroit, where we
Okay.
bring notable and important buyers and sellers and people in the industry to Detroit and give them an entire StockX filled
That's
day.
awesome.
But we've also done a thing now called StockX on the road, where we take that experience and bring it to the cities where we have a lot of buyers and sellers and let them experience us where they are. And that's been really popular. In addition to that, we've started doing drop-off locations. So where we have a big seller population, setting up these pop-ups where people can come in, drop off the things they've sold so they don't have to ship it to us.
Smart.
And then we give them a little bit of a brand experience while they're there, whether it's through video or programming the space in some way, so that they feel like they know StockX a little better than just shipping boxes to us.
Have you guys dealt with any conferences? I'm thinking like Complex Con or some of those different ones in your demo that would make sense to be in front of that audience as well.
Yep, we did Complex Con the first year that I was here, and we, intended to go in soft and
Yeah.
just kind of feel it out, but we went in kind of really big, but learned a lot from that experience and haven't decided to go back. We've decided to activate around Complex Con,
Got
so
it.
we
That's
didn't
smart.
have we didn't have a booth at ComplexCon this year, but we had a pop-up and we activated our own space in Chicago.
Awesome.
With the Chicago ComplexCon. So we had fireside chats with some key players in the industry. We're doing those weekly during our pop-up. People could come from Complex directly and drop off the things that they bought there, all of the products that they consume there. So we wanted to make sure that we owned the experience around ComplexCon without having to pay a ton of money to ComplexCon to tell the story.
Got it.
But we did send people there. I mean, we always want people to be there because, like I said, culture is key.
Yeah, it's true.
So, people who work here, I think probably 25 people just went on their own because it's just
right.
That's their life, right? Like they live this stuff. And so we've got a lot of reporting back, and it's like recon kind of reporting what are the big brands doing?
That's
awesome.
Cool,
what was not so cool? I mean, last year at the Long Beach ComplexCon Atlanta, the TV show Atlanta, had a booth that was the most basic activation. It probably cost, I don't know, did you guys work on that?
No.
It must have cost them like $10,000. It was a sofa and a photo booth. And behind it said Atlanta.
Yeah, I bet a ton of people took pictures though.
And it was the most, I think it was the
most
posted thing that I saw.
That's
was
funny.
People on the Atlanta sofa. Yeah.
Some people get too fancy with it all. Sometimes it's just as simple as that.
Exactly.
What's one social or marketing tool that you could not live without?
Social or marketing tool? That's a good question. It would probably be Instagram.
Yeah.
The platform. It's not a tool necessarily. But like I said at the beginning, when we sort of kick this off, like it's a little bit of everything. And it serves a lot of our purposes. And just personally, I have a 4-year-old daughter. So without Instagram, I don't know the world would know that I had her. So
that's funny. From a data, I guess, a technology standpoint, algorithm standpoint, are you guys able to, like, hey, David, you tried to buy this Cement 3 Jordan shoe last week. Unfortunately, I know you didn't get it, but here's another opportunity. Like, are you really getting narrow into targeting of people's behavior on your website that way?
That's a little bit out of my purview. We have a pretty dedicated growth team that handles all of that.
So that's more like paid media advertising, like direct to DTC. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and we work with the growth team quite a bit from content just to provide the creative so that, like I said, we're not doing two completely wildly different looks and feels and things like that. But
your KPIs are definitely different in that regard.
Our KPIs are totally different. In fact, the first year that I was here, we had sales as one of our key goals. And we just realized like that's not a fair goal for organic content.
Yeah.
And so we shifted that and we don't actually measure that from the organic side anymore.
All right, rapid fire here, 'cause I know I got to get you out of here before 3. From a business perspective, I actually already answered this. I'm not going to ask you. I said, what social platform seems to be working the best right now? I know it's Instagram. What would you say is number 2?
Number 2, man, to be honest, I think it's YouTube.
Interesting.
Yeah, I would say it's
like
YouTube.
Pre-roll advertisement, things like that to educate the audience?
That and just content distribution and
Got
community. There's a huge sneakerhead community on YouTube. So, I mean, we don't have the biggest numbers there, but we have a lot of engagement.
I mean, even like I've been amazed and just being in the sneaker game a little bit, like the unboxing alone, like it's crazy. Yeah. It's a whole different game that is big money, big industry.
I think the platform that there's a lot of opportunity on the table that we still have yet to take advantage of would be Facebook. Okay. And everyone talks about Facebook is dying, but their numbers aren't proving that out. And
it's more, I think, dying in terms of organic reach, but the pay to play opportunity is still the best in the game.
And the community, I mean,
Facebook groups,
exactly.
Yeah.
Sneakers and streetwear is all about community. It's all about people talking and sharing stories. And
true.
If brands can capitalize on that in a way that doesn't feel like gross and corporate, I think that's where there's a lot of opportunity, and we're exploring ways to figure that out.
I love it. I always ask this, in our industry, FOMO is a major thing since everything moves so quickly. Anything that you recommend or that you stay on top of it to make sure you're keeping your thumb on the pulse?
I hire people who are younger and cooler than me, and then I groom them.
We've actually heard that comment before too. Yeah, it's
really
important. Yeah.
Yeah, we have my team has a lot of young 20-somethings. I strongly believe in promoting from within, and so we hire really great interns, and then we convert the ones who are superstars,
Interesting.
and then we groom them and grow them internally and make them into rock stars. So that's kind of because the platforms are always going to change, the technology is always
It's
going to
true.
change, and so the people are really where the knowledge base is.
This is super random, but do you know the highest priced item that ever went off of StockX?
And this is a trick question. I don't have that off the
I mean,
top of my
15,000
head.
for Supreme. I'm just wondering if there ever is a $100,000 sale or something.
We did have a Louis Vuitton Supreme trunk that sold for I think 71,000.
Jeez, Louis Vuitton Supreme trunk.
Yeah, we did a video on it. Also wildly popular. It was like a sleeper video that we thought
Interesting.
maybe might have a niche audience, but it did gangbusters.
That's awesome. What would you say is one thing that you brought from the television industry into, I guess the product or platform industry that you're in now? Coming from NBC, coming from Turner, what are some learnings or things you brought over from that?
Probably how to work with talent. Getting talent on board. I mean, that's kind of the thing that we did with Yeezy Busta that I think was important. I worked on Jimmy Fallon's first season of The Tonight Show, and he asked a question
Is
on
he
a
as nice in person as he is on TV? It's got to be,
so
right?
nice.
So
He's a
nice.
guy. He's a nice guy.
I love it.
But he asked on a conference call, he's like, how can I make myself the most social person in late night? And I was like, if you want to be known as the most social person in late night, you have to
Be
become
social.
you have to become the most social person. Like you have to do it yourself. You can't have interns doing it.
Yeah,
You
that's
can't-
true.
And so it's really about talent and like getting them in there, getting them involved. Like I said before, like the brand ambassador, making them more than just an influencer,
Right.
and turning them into brand ambassadors. I mean, that was a big one. And then I think, by the way, sources just in, it was the LV Supreme truck.
Oh,
trunk.
did you Slack
So,
in real time? I like that.
I was. I should have said Slack was my number one tool.
Yeah, I
because
know. Slack is
Slack is
important.
huge. Shout outs to Stuart. So
71.
so yeah, I think that answers your question.
I just missed out on that bit. I put 68.5, but I lost out. It sounded like.
What are you going to put at the foot of your bed?
Yeah, exactly.
So empty.
What's one thing from the television industry that you don't miss now that you're on the other side?
How slowly it moves. So you move really fast to get things on the air, but in order to do something, you're in like 6 months of pitch mode.
Yep.
And then like maybe you get a green light and then you're in 6 more months of like iterating, and everything is just so slow. And I had to unlearn that very quickly.
Yeah.
at
Because
the start of-
Easy Buster probably happened in a week, it sounds like.
It happened once his plane landed. It was like
There we
went
go.
together for this guy, right? Yeah, everything is just like right now, breakneck pace. And as a result, you feel more fulfilled, right? You feel more productive.
Yeah.
And everything, you just like.
That's what I always say about what I love about what I do every day is like I can think of a random idea in the shower and then like all of a sudden it's on social media 2 days later and like people are engaging with it. Like that's the coolest thing. And you're right about the impact part of it. You have an idea, you bring it into the office, your team works on it, and literally it's live for people to enjoy hours later potentially. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and you go home and you're like, I just did a shitload of work.
Yeah, exactly.
And I can see it all.
Yeah.
As opposed to it's just like emails and pitching and.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's really, I think it was the hardest thing to unlearn, but it's been the most rewarding for
That's
sure.
awesome.
I mean, our former CEO, co-founder Josh Luber, he's always talking about ideas are worthless, because if it's just an idea and it stays an idea forever,
Yes.
like nothing
Amen,
happens.
yeah.
So it's all about execution.
Ideas are nothing
Yeah,
without execution. It's so true.
exactly.
Any advice for someone starting out or wanting to be, I mean, it's a really cool job you have, being able to be the VP and overseeing different directors and building a young team underneath you. I know that's a job that a lot of people would covet. Any advice on how to get there for some folks?
The not so sexy advice is learn to eat a lot of shit along the way. I think a lot of people come in and they're like, I have the best ideas, and so I should be running this team. And it's like you really do have to learn a lot about not only content creation, and all of the different areas of both the business and the world that it touches, but also how to inform strategy on top of that creation.
Play the politics a little bit with the different departments and all that stuff. Yeah.
Like learn that there is politics first, then learn how to do the politics. And I think people just come in with these ideal notions of I have great ideas, I should be running the show, and it's just kind of work your way to it, because every day that you work, you're learning something new that you're going to apply and do better the next day. So.
I love that. One thing that you wish you could do more of, or one thing that you're excited to do more of in the future at StockX?
Yeah, I think a thing that I'm really excited to do is branching out and getting outside of our core demographic and start talking to different audiences that maybe don't know anything about sneakers, but who are the purchasers for their young kids or their teenage sons, like the soccer moms, for example, or the dads who want to look cool, or kind of making content and doing some storytelling around those specific groups that maybe we wouldn't publish on our organic channels, but they are valid consumers.
What's the I think it's called Hot Look, but that was something that I just know my mom uses it, but she kind of got educated on it. Now she uses it for everything. But talk about that other demographic that buys stuff for her daughter type deal. I mean, and finds deals and feels good about it. Like that sounds interesting. Like that next step for you guys is that other demo.
Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't stop obviously talking to our core, because
of course, it's just opening up a new market.
But opening up a new market and letting them know that we're credible and that we're here for them and we can speak in their language. We're not just talking about copying and taking L's. That we're like, oh wait,
IRL, all that stuff.
You can put your credit card in and feel safe and secure in doing so, moms.
That's awesome. Very cool. And then finally, if you could recommend anybody in your network that you think could provide value or drop some good knowledge for the listeners of the podcast, who would that be? Anybody come to mind for you?
Meaning your next guest? Are you asking me to schedule your next show?
Exactly. Hey, I'm trying to be efficient here.
I don't know. Do you know Sonia Rasula? She's based in LA.
I don't think
so. She just started a podcast of her own called SOS with Sonia.
Okay.
She started a thing called Unique Markets, and it's sort of like an IRL version of Etsy.
Okay.
It's certainly not in. She did come out. She hosted an event for StockX because she's done a lot of work with Nike, but she's just a badass entrepreneur who's created this. It's actually called the Unique Empire.
Okay.
And I think she would have a lot of things to talk about with you guys.
I love it.
She's used social media to build that empire.
Very cool. Yeah, I would love to chat with her. I'll have to hit you up with that intro. Well, cool. Thank you so much, StockX. Once again, I think I'm going to buy my next pair of shoes on it. I think you sold me. I'm excited.
Awesome.
Or my next Supreme Louis Vuitton trunk, whatever.
I don't have an affiliate code, but if I did, I would give it to you.
It's all good. Well, once again, Dana Robinson, the Vice President of Content at StockX. Thank you so much for the time.
Yeah, thank you. Cool. Have a good day.
There she was, Dana Robinson. Thank you so much for joining us, the VP of Content over at StockX. $71,000 for a Supreme Louis Vuitton trunk. Crazy. Man, they've grown incredibly, 85 to 800, like we mentioned earlier in the show. And that content team seems to be baller, man. She's a VP of content, has a director of, I think, sneakers, handbags, and streetwear. And then there's content creators underneath that. They're starting to get into more experiential and then going to start to open up different demos, talking about maybe the parents to be able to buy their younger kids or, sons, daughters, etc., buy them the content. So super interesting what she's doing. I'm excited to talk to her more in the future. And listen, I liked what she was saying right when she mentioned the word data right towards the top. She mentioned that like 4 or 5 times, and always looking at data, see what's working, what's not. I was interested, and maybe we can talk to somebody on the paid side, but the algorithm based on, I'm sure that has to be something to do with that. I was just kind of geeking out over if I missed out on a bid, how they retarget that. But I know her whole team works on a lot of great content, and starting with brand awareness first. And I like how she started out as one of her KPIs being sales, and through time said, no, that's going to be over on the direct-to-consumer team. We're going to focus on building this brand, building this community, which is something we preach every single episode. There it was, episode 41, Business of Social Podcast. As always, want to thank Dylan Mooney. I want to thank producer Will Kelly, that is, and David Furker for all their help on the program. This has been another edition of the Business of Social hosted by David Brickley, powered by STN Digital.